The Inuit Mother of the Sea is a woman of many names and identities. Mother of the Deep, Big Bad Woman, and Mistress of the Sea are just a few of the translations that she goes by. However, to the greater world and the team at NASA, which we'll get into later, she is known as Sedna, goddess extraordinaire of the sea, marine life, and Inuit underworld. Like all good myths, Sedna has many different variations and identities. But who is she really? Is she a stingy villainess who exchanges prayers for sea life? Or is she the independent heroine who refused to give in to societal pressures and was ultimately punished? Today, we're breaking down Sedna's story and unraveling the depths of who Sedna really is. After all, who doesn't love a girl boss? But before we get into that, make sure you guys are subscribed to our channel and hit the bell to get notified for our next video. Sedna's story has a lot of differences when it comes to different versions of the legend. But let's start with the similarities. Throughout many translations of Sedna's tale, there are only 3 elements that everyone agrees on. 1. Sedna's father brought her out to sea on a kayak. 2. He got really f***ing dramatic and chopped off her fingers. 3. She sinks to the bottom of the sea. And that's it. From here, the events that went down in her story really start to change. One version depicts Sedna as a rebellious woman going against societal expectations. After her father presented her with eligible suitors to marry, Sedna essentially told him to F off. To make sure her father really got the message, she went and got married. To a dog. Honestly though, as weird as that is, what a badass. But obviously, her father was pissed. So pissed, in fact, that he dragged Sedna to his kayak, rowed her out to sea, and threw her overboard. Sedna tried as hard as she could to hold on to the kayak she had been thrown from. But in thwart her efforts of hanging on for dear life, her father cut off her fingers. According to this version, her fingers turned into the world's first sea creatures as they fell into the deep blue. And as Sedna sunk to the bottom of the sea and drowned, she became immortal, grew a fishtail, and gained control over the sea creatures she created. Yeah, she had quite a long day. Another version of Sedna's myth referred to her as a beautiful maiden who caught the attention of many thirsty men. This girl was rejecting proposals left and right. However, this angered Sedna's father of the year, and he decided to trade her with one of the men for some fish. And since he's such a great guy, he gave Sedna a sleeping potion so that her new husband could take her away effortlessly. However, this suitor was not what he seemed. He took Sedna to a large nest on a cliff, revealing his true form to be that of a bird spirit. At this point, her father realized he screwed up big time. He tried to save Sedna after realizing what had happened, but the bird spirit became angry and caused a great storm. In an effort to save his daughter, he takes Sedna onto his kayak and throws her overboard. Because I guess this seemed like a good idea. Although Sedna tried to cling onto the kayak, her fingers froze off and became creatures of the sea. Exactly like the other version, Sedna becomes a goddess of the sea. There is one translation, however, that actually depicts Sedna as a villain from the start. In this rendition, Sedna is born as a giant to the powerful Inuit god Nguta. In this translation, Sedna had a huge craving for, well, anything really. As a giant, she experienced hunger so powerful that she literally tried to eat her parents. In a fit of rage, her father rowed her out to sea on, you guessed it, a kayak, and threw her overboard. Just like the other translation, he chops off her fingers. This time, however, Sedna sinks down to the underworld and becomes the goddess of the monsters of the sea. Sedna's fingers also turn into sea creatures like seals and whales, providing food to the mortals of the Inuit world. In some versions of Sedna's depiction as a sea goddess, her hair holds and continues to create all the world's sea creatures. As a result, fishermen and villagers living by the sea are always trying to get on Sedna's good side. Since Sedna lacks the hands to do much of anything, a shaman must comb her hair in order to appease her. In return, Sedna sends sea creatures to the fishermen and villagers so that they can be used to provide food and clothing. When it comes to these versions, Sedna is seen as a fearful goddess who should not be messed with. If Sedna feels that the humans on land are being greedy or committing acts that harm the balance of the ocean, Sedna holds back her supply until they've learned their lesson. To the Inuit, sea creatures are a valuable source of food and clothing. After all, seals alone are highly valuable for their blubber, meat, and skin. They have been hunted by the Inuit for thousands of years as a source of food, clothing, and heat. Even to this day, every single part of the seal is used and honored for what it provides. Since she is essentially the gatekeeper of such necessary resources, Sedna is seen as a goddess and one which has earned the respect of those who believe in her legend. One can consider these translations of Sedna's story as essentially her villain origin story. Sure, she's an angry sea goddess who uses her power over humans, but she's also the wronged daughter of a cruel man who hurt her just because she didn't want to get married. Sedna's story is one of gaining control. She couldn't control the choices she had in her own life, but in the sea, she found the ultimate control. Who can't relate to that? Today, Sedna's story is mainly meant to serve as a lesson for the Inuit and their children. For many, the legend of Sedna is used to scare children away from going into deep waters. After all, who would really want to run into her? Sedna also serves as the Inuits' explanation behind the existence of sea creatures such as seals, whales, and walruses. Oh, and that comment about NASA? A dwarf planet discovered in our solar system in 2003 was named, can you guess it, Sedna. NASA decided to use her name because of the dwarf planet's huge distance from the sun. This dwarf planet is cold, isolated, and hard to reach. Kind of like how people perceive Sedna the goddess. Let's be honest here, Sedna is essentially a victim of circumstance. Even NASA couldn't help but tie her story and reputation to the naming of a planet. As the Inuit Mother of the Sea, Sedna has quite the origin story. From rebellious daughter to ruler of the sea, Sedna's story is one that has been passed down over the years as a cautionary tale and creation myth. However, if you're willing to have an open mind and consider another side of the story, you'll see that Sedna's story is surprisingly empowering. So the next time you head to the beach, think of Sedna and the transformation she went through to become the sea goddess she is today. Just avoid any kayaks. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to hear more about all things legends and myths, subscribe and hit that bell icon.